Hello boys and girls, welcome to my channel. I'm for Classic and welcome to BenchART. So today we have in here Gears of War Revolted. These guys just can't stop remastering this game for some reason. Okay, but let's start with the facts. Gears of War was initially released in 2006. Then it had remake slash remaster in 2015, which in my opinion ruined a little bit the atmosphere of the game, but bumped up a lot its quality. So they really remade a lot of assets and stuff like that. And now we have these Gears of War Remolded, which have slightly improvements over the Ultimate Edition, which was the one released 10 years ago. So I think that it's just an excuse for them to label the game with a different name and bring it over to PlayStation. And I think that's basically it. Yes, they did revamp the lighting and a lot of stuff, like they added reflections and some stuff, but I think it was just an excuse really to bring it over to the PS5. Okay, so how does it fare on the GTX 1650 Super? So this game it is using Unreal Engine 3. Yeah, it's that old, but it's massively improvement by the developer team, to a point that it almost looks like an Unreal Engine 4 game than an Unreal Engine 3. But nonetheless, it's a very easy to run game. It barely has any stutters, so it's fine. Okay. So what I'm showing in here, it is my recommended settings for you to go with, which is essentially 1080p, high settings, and FSR on its quality mode. So by using these settings, I can assure you that your experience will be above 60 all the time. The GPU can even drink on its job and rest, fall to the floor, because it's just fine. As you can see, the frame rate it is well over 60. The 1% lows are around 73. So this is my recommended. You won't be seeing any drops in performance. Now, I have one complaint with this, is that this is the typical Unreal Engine game that when the VRAM it is nearly full, it starts to downgrade textures. So while recording takes a little bit of VRAM, and so I do believe that my textures are worse, mostly because of that, because the VRAM got a little bit more full, and I got issues with the textures loading at a higher quality. But if you find issues with the textures, my recommendation it is to drop it down to medium. Now to comparison, 1080p high with FSR on its native still does offer an experience above that 60, but you can expect a drop here and there, or in different areas you can expect the game to be more demanding and have some drops below than 60. If you are fine with this, and if you have a G-Sync screen, this is your setting. You don't need to use FSR, just use FSR native and use high settings. If you want to have an experience above than 45, you can have 1080p Ultra, but don't forget to reduce textures to high or medium, whatever works for you better, and enjoy the game. Now, I have moved on to 1440p, and my recommended setting at 1440p, it is just by using median settings with FSR on its balanced mode. So we are essentially upscaling from 820p to 1440p, and using the median settings and also median textures.
Okay, man.
The experience that you can expect from this setting, it will be above than 60. The 1% lows, and like you saw at the beginning, it did slightly drop below than 60, so drops below 60 might happen, but I think they are rare, to be honest, so I don't think that's an issue. And the frame rates are mostly above than 60, so I think if you have a 1440p screen, this is the setting you should go with. 1440p, median, FSR on its balanced mode. It should provide a very good experience. The VRAM seems very controlled. It is using about 3.2 gigabytes of VRAM and half. I think the limit for this game is 3.5, and this is where the game starts to manage, and we are nearly reaching there. So let's see how it fares during this cutscene. Yeah, this cutscene is very easy to run, especially because it points out to the sky. But then we get this group area, and then it goes back to 70. So it's easy to assume that the hardest part to run it was really the beginning of this game. But as you can see, the game is running flawlessly above than 60. I don't see any textures issues with these median settings, and the VRAM stays at 3.4. So I think it's pretty good. So let's move out ahead to the comparison. So at 1440p, other choices that you have, it is going with the eye settings with FSR on its quality mode. I do recommend this if you have a G-Sync screen, okay? Because most of the performance it is well above 60, just above 60. Then you have 1440p high with FSR native, and this is where things starts to go in between 40 to 60, and then you have 1440p maximum settings with FSR native. You can expect an experience around 30, but it might drop. Despite I did use high and max in there, my recommendation it is to use medium textures, because after watching the videos and after watching the recordings very closely, I really noticed that it seems that the system it is struggling with the eye textures, despite its labeling there that the eye textures is for 4 GB of VRAM users. I do think when you go with 1440p or when you go with FSR native, you start to really have issues with the textures loading in and out. So if you are playing at 1080p and you are using FSR, you can go with high textures, okay? And I don't know if this will work for the entire game, but it was fine. But as soon as I start to use higher internal resolutions like FSR native, or as soon as I start to use 1440p or stuff like that, the eye texture started to crumble. And my recommendation is, again, despite I did use despite I did use eye textures on my tests, I think you should drop them down to medium, because clearly at the eye they are having troubles. And I've been in here talking about textures, but we are already here with 4K, FSR on its performance mode, so essentially upscaling from 1080p to 4K. And textures in here looks bad because, yeah, we are using double textures, okay? And not even sure if the game is not already having trouble with molding them, because the VRAM usage here is about 3.5, which is where I did found that the game it is putting a limit, okay, on their textures. So there might be issues already molding the textures, but I can't drop lower than low. So 4K it is hard to recommend. The performance is mostly above than 40, so it's good if you have a G-Sync screen. You can still have this 60 frames per second experience, but the graphics looks heavily downgraded if you go with 4K mode. So it's hard to recommend 4K in here. So my recommendation stands mostly at 1080p, high settings FSR with high textures, or 1440p median settings with FSR on its balanced mode. I think those are very good, but again, if you have a 4K screen and you want to play at 4K resolution, this is the best you can get, okay? So I think that's all, guys. Thank you much for watching, and I do hope to see you soon in another video for the GTX 1650 Super. Goodbye.